Welcome back to the High Ticket AI Systems Podcast. Everyone, please welcome the one and only Mr. Wickam Vi. Thank you for joining today, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show, Jordan. It's a
Yes,
pleasure to
sir.
be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those of us that aren't familiar with the name of the brand quite just yet, can you please give us a high level overview of exactly what you guys do and who you guys serve?
So, I'm a Wizard of Ads partner, which Wizard of Ads is an international partnership that we do marketing. I do digital marketing in particular, but we have partners who do everything from ad writing to radio production to media buying to digital to design. So, we run the gamut of marketing services and we have specific principles that guide us, which include always acting in the client's best interest. And, I don't get paid more when they don't grow. I only get paid more if they make more, which is a distinguishing factor, especially in the digital world where most marketing agencies take a cut of your spend, and that cut can be anywhere from 10% up to like 25% of your spend on Google Ads. And very often it's not even clearly disclosed to the client. A lot of times they mark it up before they charge the client. The client doesn't know what they actually spent on Google Ads, which is really a slippery slope. So we avoid all of that. We focus on being transparent and making sure that our clients know what they're doing and they know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And, that we're helping them grow their business
Yeah, I think transparency is a key component everywhere in life, but specifically between the agency and client dynamic.
for sure.
Are all of these employees, it sounds like W-2, or you have contractors that you work closely with?
I have employees and contractors who work for me, and I have about half and half, half employees, half contractors who work for me. All of the Wizard of Ads partners are actually like their business, they're all invested in that same outcome. There's nobody who's not a partner who's a Wizard of Ads partner, shockingly. But, some of us partners also have employees or contractors who we have close working relationships with, but I'm the buck stopper. When it comes to my client relationships, it always comes down to me. Doesn't matter if one of my employees is responsible to me for something. Ultimately, I'm responsible to the client.
I feel like it should be that way 100%. Take full ownership, right? So, hats
I
off.
believe in that.
When it comes to the pricing model, correct me if I'm wrong, is it a flat fee of just ad spend, or is there, like a go for it.
It's a flat monthly retainer that adjusts annually based on their growth or shrinking. So if, we negotiate a monthly retainer at the beginning based on the scope of work and the size of the business and those kind of factors and what their expectations are, and then each year if they've grown, we get a raise by the percent they grew by. If they shrank, we get a pay cut. So it is our interests are aligned, whereas if we were charging them a percent of ad spend, which is kind of an industry standard, we would be incentivized to get them to spend more on ads. And, in our current model, we're only incentivized to do things that help them grow their
I
business.
think as an A player, as a business owner, everyone loves performance-based modeling, whether that is
Absolutely.
base retainer plus, like, a percentage or base retainer and whatever the case is. I think
Mhm.
people should get paid for doing the work. I don't think 100% performance is, in my opinion, the smartest move to make as an agency owner. You take a lot of risk.
Depends how good you are.
You have to make the right partnerships, right? I mean, obviously, if the
That's right.
partnerships you're making are with successful businesses and they're gonna succeed without you, then yes, take on that risk. But if you're
Well, you
working
got to cheat by choosing the right businesses to work with. If somebody's, when my incentive is to help them grow, and I don't believe that they can make this business work, like I can choose to not take them on as a client, which is a reasonable decision.
Yeah, definitely reasonable, absolutely. But speaking of clients, at a high level, do you have any, like, systems in place to acquire new clients, or I guess how does that look for the company?
Well, right now I am doing what I do to pick up clients, which is appearing on a podcast. And I mean, I also have strategic relationships with other partners who refer business to me, but I am blessed to have a situation where I'm not hard pressed to have enough clients. the challenge is really having enough of me to go around and, being selective about what clients I choose to work with, that is a great place to be as a consultant.
No, absolutely. Would you consider yourself more of a consultant than an agency owner, or how would you describe yourself?
So it depends how you look at it because as a digital guy, it's really there's always execution required. So I'm not a traditional agency model, and strategy is critical and key to what I do. One of the differentiations that I have between me and many digital agencies is they are so focused on tactics and execution only that they forget that having a great strategy is what drives success. And you can have great execution without a good strategy and you don't go anywhere. So, strategy comes first, that alignment of who the client is with what we're putting out there as messaging is absolutely critical. If we don't have that kind of alignment on the messaging, alignment on that authentic view of who the client is, we're really not, it doesn't matter how well we execute, we're not going to win. And I'm only playing the game to win. I'm playing the long game. It's a relationship game. It's all about creating long-term success for these clients. And again, I cheat by choosing clients who are great operators because, the best client for me is someone who is a great operator and really bad at marketing.
No,
Because
exactly.
I can hammer that nail on the marketing side all day long. And if they don't execute, it doesn't matter. I'm still screwed, right? Because my incentive is for them to grow.
Exactly, exactly. No, definitely wise words right there. Who would you describe, like, is best suited for, I guess, your services?
So for me, there are Wizard of Ads partners that are of all sizes. But for me specifically, I generally work with owner operated businesses that are in that $3 to $50 million annual revenue ballpark size. And the general reason for that is that if they're smaller than 3 million, they probably don't have the revenue to sustain a strong digital effort the way that I want to do it. And I don't want to work with somebody that I'm going to be a burden to because if they don't have the revenue to sustain the advertising spend that's going to be required or even my consulting fee, I don't want that to be a problem. And very often, you get much bigger than 50 million and they're likely doing things like, selling out to private equity. And I don't want to work with private equity. I want to work with owner operated businesses where there's somebody who can be responsible and make those decisions. And I don't want to work with committees where you know, I've got to like wait for them to discuss this for the next 3 weeks before we can actually move forward. I want to work with somebody who can be authoritative, make decisions, and move that brand down the line and do things that are bold. You get too big and they get risk averse and they start being like, oh, well, we're going to have to be very careful about that. And, somebody who's not bold isn't a great client for me because I want somebody who's willing to put themselves out there in a powerful way. And, being bold means you're going to offend some people, and that's okay.
Well, those big risks that you're mentioning, that's how you take quantum leaps from not
Right.
not 1 to 10, but, like, 1 to 50. You like a 50x just one marketing play, so in full agreement with you there. I
That's
think
50x is big.
maybe I was over exaggerating, but, like, the quantum leap is what I was trying to get
Yeah.
at.
No, like I want people who are ready to grow by multiples, both that they have the desire and that they have the wherewithal to swing the hammer.
And it doesn't matter which industry or vertical, just 3 to 50?
So I generally work with, like I said, owner operated businesses. And the two general niches that I mostly work with are service businesses and product businesses. And the service businesses are generally local or regional. And the product businesses generally have some sort of e-commerce presence. So, somebody who's a $3 million brick and mortar, store that has 3 or 4 locations may be actually difficult to work with because, their primary goal is driving foot traffic. And there are other Wizard of Ads partners who love to work in those kind of situations. But for me, if I'm dealing with product businesses, I really love e-commerce because I can measure and I can make those incremental improvements. And, you can really see the results. I can say, hey, today your return on ad spend was 1.5, you know, 6 weeks from now, it's 1.7, 6 weeks later, it's 1.9. And we're moving that needle in the right direction. And, sometimes you'll see, oh, Google made a change. We just dropped by, from 3x to 2.5. Well, we're going to have to make a change to adjust. So, but you've got that clarity and you can make decisions relatively quickly. Not as quickly as people think you can. They're like, well, we've been running the ads for a week. Why don't we have leads yet? Why don't I have 50 sales? And I'm like, dude, I told you up front that it's going to take 3 months before we have, a campaign that's probably revenue positive, you know. So you got to set those expectations and they have to have the money to sustain. And again, this is why you get much smaller than 3 million. And it's likely that they don't have the revenue to sustain a 3 month spend on digital. Or if they're doing mass media, you need a 6 to 9 month spend before you're going to start seeing a positive ROI. So you got to have the money in the bank and the cash flow to be able to sustain a legitimate marketing effort. And, if you think that that's $500 a month in extra cash, I'm not your guy, right? You need some guy that's like hungry and young and doesn't really know what he's doing yet, but he's working on it and he's smart, like, but I've been doing this for 30 years now. I know what I'm doing. I know my way you know, around the gym, so to speak.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think what you're saying is really, really important. Gosh dang it. Facebook ads, Meta, and Google ads, they're inverted, right? So typically, whenever you launch a campaign, you'll achieve, as an example, stay with me, a 5x
On
rev.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
after a week, it's like 4.5, a few more weeks,
Yeah.
it's like
We've
3.
definitely seen that.
But Google, it's inverted. It starts out, it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, and it
Starts out
takes time
terrible.
to
It
optimize.
takes you like 3 months for a campaign to really perform well. Yeah. And, I don't run Facebook like myself. I try to stay away from Facebook just because for me, that ads management interface is so painful
Funny.
that I just hate it. I really just hate it.
People would
And
argue
so,
that Google's ads manager is way worse,
well,
but
and I've been doing like I did my first Google Ads account when it was shopping123.com before Google bought that and turned it into Google Ads. So it was like 1997 or 98. So I've been in that interface for a long, long time.
that makes sense.
And so I think it's a much more intuitive interface than the Facebook interface. But like I can get in there sometimes. Clients talk me into helping them out with setting audiences in Facebook or stuff like that. I can do it. I just try to not spend any time in there at all.
Right, right. No. You stick to your strengths, and that's what makes a great organization. Like, you put people in place that are significantly better
Yeah.
than you at the thing, right? And that's how you really
Yep.
unlock your scale.
Yep.
In
For sure.
regards in regards to growth over the next 12 months, I know
Yeah.
you said you wish you had more of you. Or in the back of your mind, are you kind of thinking about growing the company, or right now, like, you're totally cool with where you're
So I'm always looking at the future. And sometimes that future is a new product. Sometimes that future is more clients. But, right now, I would probably take on a couple clients that are the right clients, but I don't have a whole lot of room for more clients. I am also working on a couple of products that are top secret,
for sure.
but they're going to be really cool, launching in 3 to 6 months. One of them is specifically for home service companies. The other one's more of a general product that'll be, really for any business that's doing stuff online. It's good to diversify in that kind of regard, but the home service product I think is going to be really big when I launch it.
Massive industry, so 100%.
Yep.
On our first conversation, you and I were actually both incorrect, but I was happy to be incorrect about the subject.
All right, let's hear it.
You talking about mythos or fable not
Oh,
being
yeah.
on that exact day, and it's so funny because on our initial
No,
call,
no, like Fable launched as like watered down mythos. It really did. Yeah, the
it wasn't
the
as
the
good.
poly market was 70/30 on it, like Claude launching Mythos on June 9th. And I was like, don't know. And I was saying that Mythos is too dangerous to be in the wild, and turns out that was also correct. You know,
Exactly, they took that crap
so
down, dude.
so they launched it on July 9th with it watered down. They
Yeah.
they had substantial limits they put on it, and the government still told them that's still too dangerous. We're shutting that down.
I was so upset after playing with it for like 3 days. I was like, "This is like almost godlike. I freaking love this model." Then
Yeah,
of course they
it
have to
was
just
pretty tight.
it was awesome, man. I'm not gonna lie. I got so much work
Yeah,
done.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Opus 4.8 too, but
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, that being said, how do you see marketing, your position being a consultant and a really badass marketer? How do you see that and AI coupling together? Like, where do you see the advantages, the disadvantages, all that fun stuff?
well, it's a fun and kind of hassle at the same time.
Yes.
So where it's fun is I feel like I'm back in the dot com boom. Like I lived through the late 90s doing tech then. And so from the first website I made in 1995 to, I knew people that went to work for, dot com companies and, I rode on the plane next to the guy that did the coding for Alta Vista when, that was one of the big search engines. And, you know, there was so much optimism and so much opportunity and so many cool things going on. And then like everything started getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And, all of the like walled gardens that everything became, and it became much less of a Wild West. And the Wild West time was fun. It was a little scary, and we saw that kind of again. The Wild West opened up around like Onion Tour and the dark web. But there was like a new world of kind of private browsing and those kind of things that happened for a little while related to cryptography. And that's also though like really a dangerous space. You had the Silk Road and those kind of things that are like those are some bad dudes. You got Russian mob type people and you know, you know that if you put your money over there, it's probably just gonna disappear. You're probably gonna get nothing in return for that money because there's no human that you can find. But the AI world is a little bit like a recreation, a regeneration, a new birth of the internet. But having been through this a couple of times before, I'm a little more skeptical than some of the people who are like, I'm going to AI everything. And, like I know that it's a tool and it's as good as you deploy it and it's as good as you prompt it and it's as good as the code that you write with it and that you understand those things and that you can create a pile of crap just as quickly as you can create a well-written program that's going to be really cool and useful and potentially change the world. And so it's so powerful and so many people think that this means so you're just going to do 5 times more things for me and it's not like I'm not going to pay you anymore but you're just going to deliver 5 times more things and I'm like and you can't actually do 5 times more things in the same amount of time because AI also takes time. It's just different time and you have potential to deliver something that's dramatically better than you could have. So I've got my own Claude server running. I've got a Slack interface to it. I write programs using SSH command line to it. Doing program development, doing integrations with other platforms, pulling together disparate data sources, running analysis, all this kind of stuff that would be really hard and take a lot of time to do in the pre AI time. So built a dashboard for Service Titan, which is one of the two biggest platforms for home services that pulls in Service Titan data, pulls in Google Analytics, pulls in Google Search Console, pulls in Google Ads, pulls in Google Business Profile, like all of these pieces of data, and also their phone calls and analyzes transcribes all the phone calls, analyzes it, looks at all these different data sources, and then analyzes it and finds patterns. Now, like just having that data is really cool, but it's really easy to ask the wrong question. If you're not asking a useful question of the data, you're not going to get a useful answer out of it. And this kind of brings me to the biggest hassle around it, which is having clients who are kind of AI novices and don't really understand marketing or programming. And they send me an email that says, "Hey, I asked ChatGPT to look at our website and tell me everything that's wrong with it." And then they send me like a 14-page document. And I'm like, well, first of all, like 75% of this stuff's just not true. And, the other 25 we're actually already working on.
Right.
And it's just like these are not overnight efforts. This is something we've been doing for the last 2 years, and we're not done. We're going to keep doing that because that's just the thing you got to do when you're doing digital marketing. So, the assumption that everything the AI says is correct is where the biggest hassles come from, where people put in a prompt that's something like, "Hey, look at my website and tell me what I need to change." And it doesn't have any context for that. It
Exactly.
doesn't, it's not like using the usability standards that Jacob Nielsen created. What usability improvements might be useful to make on this website? You're going to get a legitimately useful answer out of that. Or using WCAG requirements for accessibility, please analyze my website and tell me what accessibility changes that we should make. Also, a really useful query to run to the AI, a useful prompt. But if I just say, what should I change on my website? You're going to get a bunch of crap that's not that useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very true words right there. I think you have to take like a not a leadership approach, but context is everything. You have to be
Yeah.
very, very specific with what you're asking.
Hmm.
You can't just say, "Hey,
Yeah,
what's my website?"
totally.
It's gonna list everything that it thinks it's wrong, right? But if you like use this framework and let me
Yeah.
know how to optimize it best within
For
this.
this specific thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. One of my, colleagues said that AI is like 80/20. I'm like, "Okay, what do you mean?" They're like, "It's 80%" excuse me, 80/20, yes, it is 80/20, but it's 10% on the front end, so all of the information all the context, you
That
front.
was you and me last week.
Right, no,
It's
you're
ten
right,
eighty
you're right.
ten, and I got that from Ryan Dice. So I will give credit where
Okay,
credit is due. Ryan Dice came up with the 10-80-10 formula. He's brilliant. I'm a big fan, and he's a super nice guy.
solid, solid. Yeah, but you essentially know where I'm going with that, but yeah,
Yep.
and when it comes to speed, AI is not
But not
to be.
everybody else here knows what the 10-80-10 principle is.
Do you wanna elaborate?
I will elaborate.
Go
So
for it.
10-80-10 with AI means you got to do the 10% of the work up front. That 10% that you do up front makes all the difference of everything else that happens from it. So this means giving it that context that you were saying, Jordan. Like you've got to give the AI good context that's useful. Understanding enough context yourself so that you will know that when the answer comes out, you'll know whether it's true or not. I can't tell you how many times people are having AI do stuff and the answer that comes out is wrong, but they don't know enough about what it's supposed to be to even know that it's off by a factor of 5 or 10, because they're just like, well, the AI said, it must be true. It's like, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true.
Exactly.
So Abraham Lincoln told me I shouldn't believe everything that I read on the internet.
Absolutely, and the way that I can were you gonna continue? My mistake.
So that's the 10% up front.
Yeah.
So I develop that, I do my own research, I get my own understanding, then I throw it into the AI with a thoughtful contextual prompt and let it chug on it and do the 80% of the work that's the grunt work because it's really good at crunching data and really good at crunching numbers. It's not really good at insight. And so you have to have that insight up front. That's your first 10. The last 10% is you have to have human validation. Don't put it out without having humans read it before it goes out because AI makes mistakes and it often makes wrong assumptions. And you may have to put it back in at the front. It may be that you do 1080 and you're like, crap, like there was stuff that I knew that I should have told it that I didn't tell it in the front end. Pass it back. We're reprompting that. And like it's not unusual for me when I'm working trying to get the AI to do something that I'll have, 17 or 25, back and forths before I actually get it to do what I really wanted it to do on that first prompt. And the better you train your AI, the less prompts it will take the next time because it will make assumptions that you didn't even consider as possibilities. But if you're not paying attention and you don't have adequate context yourself, you will just let it run with those assumptions. And that may take you way off course.
100%. And the way that I understand it is when you are growing the company and you are trying to replace a part of your day-to-day job, and you don't
Hmm.
necessarily understand how to actually do the job well or fully.
Sure.
You're gonna train this novice that obviously knows way less than you and attempt to say, "Hey, bud, figure it out." It's not gonna know what to do because it has 0 context what to do.
Right.
So you as a business owner or professional need to understand the skill, gain the skill, acquire the skill and
Hmm.
knowledge, so you can then train the AI better, which will obviously accelerate your growth, speed, execution,
Totally.
all.
Totally. Yeah. And I would look at it like if you're wanting to write programs and you don't know how to think like a programmer, you're going to create a program that probably isn't especially efficient or well written, which is kind of my hesitance towards people that are vibe coding things and putting them out in the wild, which it's really amazing. Like I've got a couple of friends who are totally not coders and have vibe coded some things that seem to work pretty well, but I'm like, I would not put that out in the wild as, like this is a professional business to business or, whatever website that people are going to be using. And I've not tested, I've not validated, I've not had customers test it, make sure that everything works. It's again, there's an assumption, well, the AI wrote the code, so it's probably good. And I know with my experience with Claude Code that very often I'll get 10 steps down the way and we'll hit a roadblock and it'll say, oh, I made an error in my assumptions in step 3. I'm going to need to recode everything from step 3 on to fix that assumption I made in step 3. I'm like, yep, I didn't tell you to do that, but you did that. And now we need to fix that. Yeah.
People say don't get mad at the AI. I swear, if you hear me on the day to day, I am cussing out my AI. I'm like, why would you do this? Like, we said X, Claude, we said X. Why are you doing Y, bro? It is like a constant theme with this thing. Like overall, like I love it, but sometimes it's like, dude, you're like, what are
No,
you?
it's amazing and it's powerful and it's still not perfect. It's
It's
not anywhere close to perfect. I had a conversation where I was doing market research for a client and it was probably a conversation that lasted, 75 or 100 back and forths. And literally the same calculation assumption that I told it like 3 or 4 times, stop doing that. It's wrong. You have to do it this way. And this was ChatGPT, probably 6 months ago, not Claude today.
yeah,
But
yeah.
like with the online, there's a lot of things I can do with Claude Code that I couldn't do in that situation online. This was before projects existed. It's before, I had a custom, Claude server where I have all the instructions and I can make it save those instructions to the SOP every time I make a change. And I can review the memories and tell it where those memories go and all that kind of stuff that just, when you're just using the, Claude.ai or ChatGPT.com, there's a lot of things that you can do in a custom code server that you couldn't do in that walled garden that is, their website.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. Over the next 12 months, I know we talked about growth, but different note. Oh yeah, you have the 2 projects coming up, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're in progress. They're not coming up, but it's another thing when you've got new businesses to work on while you're doing your current business. You
Yeah.
gotta spread your time carefully.
But we love the challenge though, you know?
True. True
Are you
fact.
are you taking on I guess what is the reasoning behind that? Out of curiosity.
So, developing products, part of the reason is because there's only so much of me to go around. And so I can only work with a certain number of clients. 25 to 30 is really for my consultancy where I draw the line is, if I If I have more than 25 to 30 clients, I'm not going to be able to give them the individual attention I want to give them. And I'm not looking to have an agency where I'm working with 600 clients and none of them get to talk to me. Like it's nothing against people that are doing that. That's just a different business model. And to that end, developing products is a great way to leverage my knowledge, to leverage my expertise in a way that scales really easy.
No, absolutely. Like, time is definitely constrained. But with products,
Indeed.
time is essentially limitless. You know what I mean?
Yep.
For
Kinda.
the Yeah, for the maybe that was a horrible way to say that, but I think you get the idea what I'm
Good enough.
Exactly, thank you. I am curious about the home service project. Without going into nitty-gritty, is it like CRM, data analytics, or is it like a one of one thing that you've custom built because of the data that you have from working with clients?
No, it's gonna be a marketing product that allows them to spend their money more efficiently and make more money off of their investment in Google Ads and Bing Ads and things like that. So,
That's amazing, we'll keep it there.
you know, without getting into any
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
specifics, that's the direction of what it's going to do for them. It's gonna help them make it more informed, better decisions, and to make more money off the money they spend.
No, I like that. We'll keep that there. Thank you, Vi. That being said, where can they find you if someone is, wanting to chop it up about marketing or possibly work with you?
Well, you can go to Google and you can type in Vi Wickam, and I'm really easy to find. You can also search for Wizard of Ads online, and I'm also easy to find there. Or you can go to wizardofadsonline.com, and that and 7 other domain names will get to me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Vi. I wish you the best of success with the company and audience. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Jordan. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you.
Yes, sir.